All right, it's 5 o'clock on Tuesday, June 3rd. Time to call our regular monthly meeting of the Logansport City Council to order. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Roll call, please.
Jeremy Ashcraft.
Here.
Bob Bishop.
Here.
Joe Buck.
Here.
Gary Fox.
Here.
Charlie Hastings.
Here.
Chuck Liddell.
Present.
Teresa Popejoy. Present.
Approval of the minutes from the May 5th, 2014 meeting.
Your Honor, I ask that the minutes be approved as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote on approval of the minutes.
Teresa Popejoy. Yes. Chuck Liddell.
Yes.
Charlie Hastings.
Yes.
Gary Fox.
Yes.
Joe Buck.
Yes.
Bob Bishop.
Yes.
Jeremy Ashcraft.
Yes.
Minutes are approved on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Under comments of the mayor tonight, I apologize for the uncomfortable conditions in the room. Our air conditioner went out yesterday morning sometime, and we were able to get it looked at this afternoon, and it's better than it was, but it's still not as good as it would have been. I appreciate your patience as we move through this meeting. Are there any petitions or comments of citizens?
Good evening, members of the council. I'm here tonight, Dave Kitchell, 1423 North Street, to ask you to vote to strip the proposed purchase power agreement tonight of the $1.75 million franchise fee. My feelings on this have been repeated to me by various people throughout the community who feel that they've already paid the money through LMU rates, through CEDAT money, through taxes, and by requiring them to pay more money again to the as yet unknown financier for this project, that they'll be asked to pay a second time for what they've already paid for. I was, I think, mischaracterized this morning on the Talk of the Town show, in which it was mentioned that someone had suggested that we pay this back over 25 years. That was not the comment that I made to the Utility Service Board last week. What I said was that it could be paid back from future proceeds. The comment from the mayor this morning was, well, you just don't do that. Well, to my knowledge, there is no state law, no city law, no federal law that prevents you from doing that. There is, however, a protection in Indiana from poor judgment of utility decisions, and that is membership in the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, of which we no longer belong. Now, this decision basically is a way of saying we're going to sweep a poor decision under the rug by saying we're going to charge consumers more money. This fee represents over $50 for every man, woman, and child in this city. And the people that are going to pay the bulk of this freight are employers. The industrial ratepayers are going to pay the most. Representative Bosma, who's our House Speaker, has done a fine job, is seated behind me, and he's worked very hard in this last session, along with Randy Head, our state senator, to relieve the tax burden on personal property for employers. And they've done a fine job of repealing that tax, but now we're imposing one on them to do exactly the reverse thing of what we just did. And I would call upon you to reconsider that and to say that we're going to pay it back where it should be, but to pay it back from future proceeds. Now, if the timeline that Representative Bosma indicated is correct, and what the mayor said this morning on Talk of the Town is accurate, we could begin construction in another year. We could be online here in a matter of 3 years, and we could get up to $8.9 million a year. That's not waiting 25 years to pay it back. It's waiting a couple of years to do it. But asking the taxpayers to do this is the reverse of what the last Republican president did in issuing a $100 tax incentive to stimulate the economy. We're imposing a tax penalty to take the economy backwards. And frankly, business and industry doesn't need this. We don't need this. Taxpayers don't need this. And I would call on you to reconsider this part of the purchase power agreement. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Oh, yeah, go ahead,
I'd just
Bob.
like to respond to that Dave, it wouldn't matter if we took the 1.75 million or not. It's not going to change the rates. Those rates are fixed in this agreement. So we would just be out the 1.75. So I think that would be a poor decision.
State your name, please.
My name is Jim Brew. I live at 1315 East Market. I was born in this town, and I created the service board, and I've been on the city council where you now sit. And my words are addressed to the members of the Common Council who vote on this proposed ordinance 2014-20. I ask you to consider the following reasons for voting it down, or at least table it. First, the title says this is an agreement, which means a contract, which means a meeting of the minds. That means there's two sides, with TSC Logansport Energy Group, LLC. First of all, LLC stands for Limited Liability Corporation, and they all have to be registered here in Indiana as an LLC. And when you go to the website for the Secretary of State, where such registrations for LLCs are all summarized, there is no such entity as TCS Logansport Energy Group, LLC. This is important because under the Uniform Commercial Code, both sides of a contract have to be identified. In this case, the seller, which is this secret French company, we're told, is not identified. Therefore, it is not a proper party to a contract under the Uniform Commercial Code. First of all, because there's no such entity. All there is, if you go to the Secretary of State's website, is they saved the name. Mr. Bosma, who's getting paid for being here tonight, his firm also presumes to be the person to notify if you want to get in contact with TCS Logansport Energy Group. That is just a reserved name. It's not all it is. That's all it is. So that's a couple of contract problems. Your lead-in paragraph refers to the Rate Stabilization Act. That effort, which ordinance by you was upheld as valid by the Indiana Supreme Court, related to public-private agreement law. You awarded that public-private agreement to Pyrolyzer. And since Pyrolyzer apparently is not part of this PPA that you're voting on, this new undertaking is not part of the old public-private agreement. That law was, that opportunity was published, and this secret French, we're told they're French, company was not one of the bidders, and therefore not available to be awarded the public-private agreement law. Under French law, any entity, whether you manufacture cars or sell ice cream on the corner, is required to register. And there are registration facilities at all levels of government in France. And the summary of all of these business entities is called the Registre du Commerce et des Sociétés. And guess what? If you go to page 22 of your PPA, which presumes to name the French entity TCS Logansport Energy Group, LLC, care of, and here comes your Strasbourg, France address, care of TCS Energy Group, SARL. SARL is the way you say LLC in French. You look them up in the registre, you look them up in the registry, and there is no documentation, there is no certificate of a French right to do business by this TCS Energy Group. So this document has words that are just a game, a name game. There's no entity that goes by that name, so you don't know who you're dealing business with. And that's serious, because most people who spend money know who they're doing business with. Further, the first examination of this power purchase agreement shows that it's based upon, is premised upon a companion document called the Development Agreement. In fact, on page 4, where Development Agreement is defined, it refers to the Development Agreement. It means the agreement entered into by the parties providing for the financing, acquisition, development, design, permitting, construction, and commissioning of the facility by the developer. Entered into by the parties means that's past tense. It means it's already been done. So to vote as though the development agreement is an accomplished document and a proper premise for a PPA is not logical if you were teaching English or history, maybe even in government when you deal with the politics of what is going on here. So I ask you respectfully, oh yeah, look at Exhibit B of the PPA. It's blank. That's the description of the facility. In most business circles, the development agreement comes first, the power purchase agreement comes second. The importance of looking at the development agreement is that is where the responsibilities of the city will be made known. Based upon the schedule that you're on, in 3 weeks, somehow in the meantime, everybody's going to get in a hurry and read this very important document called the Development Agreement. And after all the money that you've spent without explanation, when I was last here, and it's been put online since then, I documented the 6 checks written to the consultancy firm for $1,225,000. After spending that much money and getting no product out of the pyrolyzer project, please slow down and think about these things and proceed according to law. And I thank you for your continuing attention.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Are there any more? Tony. Please state your name and address for the record.
Okay. My name's Tony Campbell. I live at 1001 Manorwood Drive here in Logansport. First of all, I'd like to thank the mayor and the council for this opportunity to express our thoughts about the proposed power agreement. I hope all comments are taken into account when you cast your vote tonight. The vote in front of you tonight reminds me of an expression by Yogi Berra. It's deja vu all over again. If you remember, a little over a year ago, the council approved entering into a contract with Polarizer, LLC. Now, a little over a year later and $1.7 million later, you're asked to cast a similar vote. I have a few concerns, and I hope the council will take these into consideration. First, TCS, as Mr. Brew brought out, simply does not exist. My question to the legal counsel, can you legally enter into an agreement or contract with an entity that does not exist? I think the answer is no. Secondly, the funding for this project, is it available? We're being told there's a secret foreign investor that wants to fund this project, but if you remember, you were promised the same thing the last time we were here. The council should have the opportunity to properly scrutinize all funding claimed. After all, a 1-minute internet search, you can find that Polarizer's address is an apartment in Boca Raton, Florida, that is currently in foreclosure. What I'm wondering is, are we stepping into the same trap? I'm also concerned that other alternatives were not considered. In any negotiations that I've been a part of, you take every possible alternative in front of you to make an educated decision. this simply was not done. Originally, only proposals for trash facilities were requested. Now we are considering a natural gas with trash backup, but no proposals were requested for this type of facility. And finally, this uncertainty about energy cost in Logansport is killing any chance of attracting meaningful manufacturing jobs. Over the past year, 99,000 manufacturing jobs have been created in the U.S., but I challenge you to name any new company that has added any jobs here in Logansport. This despite two of the greatest things that have happened in this community in a long time to create jobs: the new Ivy Tech campus to supply businesses with an educated workforce, and the Hoosier Heartland Quarter that now links us to Lafayette and Fort Wayne. My recommendation to the council is the vote should be delayed until TCS becomes a legal entity. The council can then properly research the company and its owners to ensure that there are no related parties to anyone in the negotiations. There is no conflicts of interest, and it's a business that we want to do business with. Secondly, delay the vote until funding is obtained. If it is true there is a secret foreign investor, this shouldn't be a problem. Third, delay the vote until all alternatives are considered and properly vetted. As stewards of how tax dollars are spent in Logansport, I think we owe it to the citizens of this city to ensure no more money is spent and wasted.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Mercedes Brew, 1315 East Market Street. I have two things that I want to bring up to you tonight. One is I'd like to get a copy of the proposed map for the combined TIF districts. That's what you're voting on tonight. Your ordinance 2014-17. I've gone to 2 redevelopment commission meetings asking for that map. At one meeting I got a little paper map, but I know there's more to it than that because it talks about red lines, and what I got was this, and
You got the same map, it's just not in color.
Well,
So, yeah,
and it's tiny, I can't read it, and I did a public records request April 8th and heard from the mayor on May 2nd, and he said there is no proposed TIF district map available at this time. Maybe I'm asking it for by the wrong name, but I'd like to see what you're voting on. You know, I've been to the redevelopment commission twice, and the plan commission's voted on this, and I keep asking for this map. How do I get a copy of this map?
As you may be aware, there is a policy in place now that the city has implemented. All requests are to go through the mayor's office, and the mayor's office is responsible for providing that information. Your request of April 8th was fulfilled. Any documents that were not provided are still a matter of, they're protected because there is some legal services that are still being provided. That information should be available to you before the end of the week.
Okay, so the city council is going to vote on this the first time, and still the public can't see the map that they're voting on.
I'm sorry, we provided the information. It was available in the meeting. There were maps laid out in the TIF meeting. You have one in your hand.
Yeah, a tiny one that I can't read.
And we also had the poster size board up here during that meeting that was colored.
Of the proposed map?
Of the final map. That was that big poster board that
Okay,
was up there.
can I come into some office and see that? Can I look at it?
I think the mayor's taking care of your request.
Your request will be fulfilled before the end of the week.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
The map we have here tonight, it's the same as you have because
Yeah.
the city copier doesn't do color.
Yeah.
It's black and white also.
Yep. Okay.
Is it available electronically anywhere? Do we have it on any of the city websites?
I don't believe it's on any city website, but I have provided those maps, and I have provided them to the mayor's office. He distributes that because of the policy of distributing the information.
And committee meetings of city council. There's a committee
Okay,
meeting.
I understand that. I just think you know, that would, it's easy to put those things up on the site, and you can zoom in, zoom out, and look at them in full color without any additional cost. So I think
The
that would be...
redevelopment commission doesn't have a website at this point.
Who's in charge of that?
Do you have anything
There's
else?
a new
The
guy
commission
now.
does have a website or does not? Does the commission have a website or does not have a website?
No.
Okay.
Does not.
There are, I believe there's minutes on the
Okay.
website, the city's
Okay.
website, you can get those, but the commission itself does not have a
Okay.
website.
Okay. The second thing is the PPA, and I see that you'll be considering passing it with conditions. I'd like to point out that this has been characterized as a natural gas with trash backup. I'm not sure how that phrase came about, but some people are imagining trash being used temporarily as a backup. The trash plants that I know about strive to run continuously at full capacity. They make their money on processing trash. Generating electricity seems to be a lesser source of income. It'd be nice to see an example of the sort of facility that is proposed so that we can see whether it works. It seems quite possible that we are still looking at the world's largest trash processing facility. And you've seen my graph that shows, you know, other trash processing facilities around the United States and shows how large this proposal, the original proposal, was. But we don't know, there's no way to tell what we're looking at because Exhibit B, where the facility should be described, is blank. So just like you wouldn't sign a blank check, I'm hoping that you don't approve an agreement that has a blank page. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mercedes.
Are there any more public comments? Please come forward, state your name and address.
David Sutherland, 823 East Market Street. For relief of you, this has nothing to do with the PPA. I read my paper late today from yesterday and noticed that you were looking at a display.
Sir, could you speak in the mic? These fans are...
Sorry. I read the paper from yesterday late today and noticed you were looking at a display. My hobby from 1980 on has been computers and electronics. I've spent about 3 years now selling electronics for a retailer out of Rochester. And the price seemed odd to me, so I spec'd it out. And I believe if we buy the parts, hire local, then you could probably cut anywhere from $9,000 to $12,000 off of that price. I would hope that the city would think about this, do their own specifications, and take a look at this as a possible alternative that could save us money. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, and we'll certainly do that.
Thank you.
Are there any more public comments? Okay. Hearing none, are there any reports from committees, boards, or commissions? Okay. Under old business, ordinance 2014-14, Councilman Bishop, please.
Ordinance 2014-14, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana, regarding the polygraph testing for the police and fire departments. Your Honor, I call for a vote on ordinance 2014-14.
Second.
Ordinance 2014-14 has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mayor Franklin, I'd just like to, as we discuss this in committee meeting, I ask that there be notification to individuals pre-employment so that they're aware of this charge and that they're going to have to do that before, and I just want to be sure that that has been taken care of.
Yes. Short answer is yes. This ordinance passed out of, was approved in committee to be forwarded to the entire council for a vote. And I apologize, I still don't understand what happened between the committee meeting and last month's meeting. There was a different variation of this ordinance that made it into the packet last month. We recognize those differences. This is the correct version that was advanced out of the committee meeting. And it's strange. I just haven't been able to track it down and find out exactly what happened. But this was the modified version. It was modified and approved in the committee meeting. So
Yeah, this one looks good.
I believe it addresses everybody's concerns, and we actually circulated this copy electronically a few weeks ago to make sure that everybody had a chance to weigh in on it.
This is the second reading.
This is the second reading. Call for a vote on ordinance 2014-14.
Joe Buck,
Yes.
Gary Fox,
Yes.
Bob Bishop,
Yes.
Jeremy Ashcraft,
Yes.
Charlie Hastings.
Yes.
Chuck Liddell.
Yes.
Teresa Popejoy.
Yes.
Ordinance 2014-14 passes on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Ordinance 2014-15. Councilman Hastings, please.
Ordinance 2014-15 for the rezoning of 1400 West Market Street, Logansport, Indiana. Your Honor, I call for a vote on ordinance 2014-15.
Second.
Ordinance 2014-15 has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote on ordinance 2014-15.
Charlie Hastings,
Yes.
Chuck Liddell.
Yes.
Teresa Popejoy,
Yes.
Jeremy Ashcraft.
Yes.
Bob Bishop.
Yes.
Joe Buck,
Yes.
Gary Fox.
Yes.
Ordinance 2014-15 passes on a vote of on second reading on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Ordinance 2014-16. Councilperson Popejoy, please.
Ordinance 2014-16, addition to the Logansport and fringe zoning ordinance requiring a development plan for economic hardship with redevelopment and development in the East End planning area. Mayor Franklin, I call for a vote on ordinance 2014-16.
Second.
2014-16 has been moved and properly seconded. I believe Erin is here in case there's any questions. She is in the back of the room. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll call for a vote on ordinance 2014-16.
Gary Fox,
Yes.
Joe Buck,
Yes.
Charlie Hastings.
Yes.
Bob Bishop,
Yes.
Chuck Liddell.
Yes.
Jeremy Ashcraft.
Yes.
Teresa Popejoy.
Yes.
Ordinance 2014-16 passes on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Now, under new business, ordinance 2014-17. Councilman Buck, please.
Ordinance number 2014-17, ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Logansport approving certain amendments to the declaratory resolutions and the economic development plans for the Highway 35 Gateway Commerce Economic Development Area and the East End Economic Development Area, the expansion and consolidation of such economic development areas and related allocation areas, the consolidation of the plans for such economic development areas, the addition of certain projects to the consolidated economic development plan and related matters.
Second.
Was there a motion to advance the vote?
There wasn't.
No. He just read it.
I'd like to make a motion to approve or vote on ordinance number 2014-17.
Second.
Wore him out reading.
Ordinance 2014-17 has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote on ordinance 2014-17.
Jeremy Ashcraft.
No.
Bob Bishop.
Yes.
Joe Buck,
Yes.
Gary Fox.
Yes.
Charlie Hastings.
Yes.
Chuck Liddell.
No.
Teresa Popejoy.
No.
Ordinance 2014-17 passes on first reading on a vote of 4 in favor and 3 opposed. Ordinance 2014-18. Councilperson Ashcraft, please.
Ordinance 2014-18, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana, approving certain amendments to the declaratory resolution and the redevelopment plan for the downtown redevelopment area, adding certain projects to the downtown redevelopment area plan and related matters. Mayor Franklin, I call for a vote on ordinance 2014-18.
Second.
Ordinance 2014-18 has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote on ordinance 2014-18.
Teresa Popejoy.
No.
Chuck Liddell.
No.
Charlie Hastings.
Yes.
Gary Fox.
Yes.
Joe Buck.
Yes.
Bob Bishop.
Yes.
Jeremy Ashcraft.
No.
Ordinance 2014-18 passes on a vote of 4 in favor and 3 opposed. Ordinance 2014-19. Councilman Fox, please.
Ordinance 2014-19, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana, amending Ordinance 97-32, Property Maintenance Ordinance, and ordinance to establish and enforce minimum standards for housing in the City of Logansport. I motion for Ordinance 2014-19.
Second.
Ordinance 2014-19 has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote on ordinance 2014-19.
Bob Bishop.
Yes.
Joe Buck.
Yes.
Gary Fox.
Yes.
Charlie Hastings.
Yes.
Chuck Liddell.
Yes.
Teresa Popejoy.
Yes.
Jeremy Ashcraft.
Yes.
Ordinance 2014-19 passes on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Ordinance 2014-20. Councilman Liddell, please.
Ordinance 2014-20, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana, ratifying and confirming a power purchase agreement with TCS Logansport Energy Group, LLC. Your Honor, I call for a first vote on ordinance 2014-20.
Second.
Ordinance 2014-20 has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Before you do, Councilman Bishop, maybe a presentation by legal counsel Bosma might explain some of the questions before we get started. So if you could, Mr. Bosma, please state your name.
Mr. Bosma. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. President, members of the council, my name is Brian Bosma. I'm the chairman of the Government and Environmental Practice Groups of the Indianapolis law firm of Kroger, Gardis, and Regas, 111 Monument Circle, Indianapolis, suite number 900. It's my pleasure to be with you this evening and to briefly tell you a little bit about what's in the document before you, the document ratified and confirmed by the ordinance before you, really, and also to answer your questions and perhaps address a couple of items that came up during public testimony. The power purchase agreement between LMU and TCS Logansport Energy, LLC, and I'll call it a proposed agreement because there were a couple of interesting concepts that were brought up during public testimony, and they're not without, a few of them were not without some accuracy. Is this a binding agreement? No, it's not, because the entity has not yet been formed. It is an offer to enter into an agreement technically with a promoter who is wants a power purchase agreement, which is the financing mechanism for a project like this, is approved with the belts and suspenders that you have before you, both in your ordinance and in the LMU approving resolution, will be available then to them to attempt to bring together their financing and their partners. When their partners are brought together, all the participants are on board, then TCS Logansport Energy LLC will be formed, as will the LLC in France, which is would be the controlling entity, presumably the Société et Responsabilité Limitée, is the technical phrase for an LLC, as mentioned by Mr. Brew. And the document that you're confirming and ratifying, because this is really a document that's within the power and authority of the LMU alone, but pursuant to your approving ordinances for the mayor to put together a program for everyone to consider. The part of that ordinance was to require all documents to come back through the council. Essentially, the power purchase agreement, which I'll call the PPA so I can not say it long every time, is essentially an output contract. Well, what does that mean? It is, you don't really care where the electricity comes from. You want the output. You want low-cost electricity, 5.3 cents to start with per kilowatt hour, which is exceptionally below the market rate. That rate is good for approximately 2 years, depending on when they actually start the facility, through January 1, 2019, beginning January 1, 2019. It's good for 2 years through the end of 2020. And then that 5.3 cent per kilowatt hour rate increases in accordance with changes in the consumer price index, all urban, for the 25-year term. The applicable energy rate, which is that 5.3 cents as adjusted for the CPI, is good for up to 150 megawatts of energy. That's approximately twice what your normal demand is. And so you can put that in perspective. You could actually fit 2 Subaru Isuzu factories, as are in Lafayette, within that projected 150 megawatts on top of your current load. It is, you normally wouldn't describe a facility in a power purchase agreement because this is the key document for financing. The development agreement is still pending. Once the development agreement is agreed upon, I'll give you a few thoughts as to when that might happen, then the Exhibit B that was referred to that will give the details of the technology that will be used will be added to the agreement as an exhibit. But it is described that generally the project is described both in the PPA and in detail in the development agreement. And if you happen to check, and I'm sure most of you did, the questions and answers that were posed by the public and the Q&A responses that were posted on the LMU website, we actually give verbatim in the draft development agreement what the description of the facility is. It's a minimum 300 megawatt and up to a 2,000 megawatt natural gas power plant, which may be retrofitted to refuse-derived fuel. That's difficult technology to get in place in the time frame that is required. So the promoter, developer, is in the process of moving forward with a natural gas facility with the right under the PPA and ultimately the development agreement to, if it gets the technology together, to retrofit it for refuse-derived fuel. It's anticipated to be built in phases, with the first phase being 300 to 500 megawatts, and then, as I stated, up to 2,000 megawatts. The PPA also gives some details in another agreement. We'll give many details about network upgrades to LMU's system, which will be required if with a facility of this output, and those are entirely the developer's responsibility. Upon completion of the project, the interconnection improvements, which are the upgrades to LMU's current electric system, become the absolute property of LMU. They will own that, and also the PPA provides for a facilities charge monthly from the owner of the project to equal the costs of anticipated maintenance, repairs, retrofitting, and upgrades of those interconnection improvements. The PPA also provides that for sales of electricity to third parties, the LMU will receive 4% of the proceeds of the sale to third parties. Speculative has been the item that's been raised. Well, it is. It is speculative at this point, but if those sales are made, the city ultimately will receive 4% of the gross sale to every third party. You do not share in any losses from that. You only have an upside, not a downside. If Indiana adopts a renewable portfolio standard, that's big jargon for requirement that LMU or any other consumers would have to buy power that is at least a percentage from a renewable source, while the agreement says you get to keep all your environmental attributes, that's those credits and items that of privilege that you receive for generating that fuel or generating that power from renewable sources. The PPA says if we have a renewable portfolio standard, you've got to give us the certificates that we meet that requirement. The city and LMU are both secured through several means through the two agreements. First of all, the PPA includes insurance to cover liabilities, losses, and injuries that covers the city and LMU and its respective representatives. And the PPA also includes a security instrument. Well, what is that? That is an instrument which can be an insurance policy, a performance bond, or a letter of credit that essentially secures the next 3 years' benefit of the bargain, that energy rate difference between what you're purchasing at and what the projected energy rate in the future is, so that if there's a bankruptcy or something else happens, the city has security to guarantee 3 years of that benefit of the bargain. The PPA has very strong provisions for indemnification, default, and breach, and those are all secured by the security instrument. The PPA and the development agreement, and this was set forth in detail in the Q&A responses, provides for a backup delivery plan to be delivered early. Well, why would you want a backup delivery plan? In case it is anticipated or unanticipated and it occurs, there's a delay in delivery of electricity from the day that you start needing it, or there is some problem with the plant in the future. We're requiring the developer to have a backup delivery plan that projects for the next 3 years, if you can't produce energy, where will it come from and how. We do give the facility lenders, this is a substantial construction project, so facility lenders will want to step in front of the rights of the city. That's very typical for any development agreement of this type of size. And there is an exhibit to the PPA, Exhibit E, which is a sample intercreditor agreement that the LMU and the city would execute in favor of the facility lenders at the expense of the developer. After the first 5,000, these will come up continuously throughout the project as financing and refinancing occurs, and the developer reimburses the costs of the city's legal need for review of those things. Billing and payments under the PPA are very similar to your current Duke contract, monthly, rights of audit, and reporting. A couple of documents are not before you tonight, and that's that. There's no inaccuracy in the statements that were made, but I'll tell you why that those documents aren't in front of you tonight, and they are part of the program. The first is the development agreement. The development agreement will give the details of how the facility will be constructed, details very similar to the PPA on the rights of the city and the LMU and the protective mechanisms, the risk mitigation provisions for the city and LMU during development of the project. Again, in the Q&A, we went through the details of those that are contained in the draft development agreement, which we have not yet received the formal response from the developer regarding details. So that's one agreement. There will be a management operation and maintenance agreement with the LMU that will provide that LMU employees will, by contract, provide the operation of the facility. The PPA and the development agreement both mentioned that the LMU is under an AFSCME agreement and has recognized a labor force, and that the operator will, the developer will abide by those agreements and essentially contract at the developer's expense to pay for the management and operation of the facility. And there also will be interconnection agreements, an interconnection agreement with the city and an interconnection agreement with the Mid-Continent Independent Service Operator, which is the grid for North America that's kind of in sections, north-south sections across America. Those agreements will come into place after permitting occurs. That's typically what happens, and there will be engineering analysis and other items that will occur as to exactly what those interconnection improvements will be, and those are anticipated both in the PPA and the development agreement. The approval ordinance before you tonight and the approval resolution that was before LMU last week or 2 weeks ago now, I can't remember, has some belts and suspenders. First of all, the LMU approved the PPA with a number of conditions. One of those conditions was you all ratify and confirm the PPA to fulfill the obligations of your ordinance. Another condition was that you all approve which is your right under the statute, the development agreement, and that it is submitted back to the LMU to ratify and confirm the development agreement, just as you are ratifying and confirming the LMU's legal authority to approve the agreement. The PPA and the development agreement then, according to the resolution and your ordinance, are subject to final approval, ratification and confirmation by the Board of Works, and that will be when the $1.75 million franchise fee is received. Just a couple of items that I want to be sure are clear. First of all, our law firm does not in any way represent TCS Logansport or the developer in any way. We did reserve the name on their behalf at the request of the mayor. That requires a $25 fee, and my secretary did it. We didn't bill anybody for it. That was because when Pyrolyzer was in the loop, a wily citizen went and reserved a bunch of Pyrolyzer names so that they would have to be purchased if in the event they wanted to go forward with the names they had. We didn't want the mayor didn't want the same thing to happen with the chosen name of TCS Logansport. The franchise fee, I don't believe this concept is understood. The franchise fee is not worked into the rate base so that it's paid by citizens in any way. This is a repayment to the city of the estimated costs that you've incurred over the last 2.5 years to put this program together, your engineering research, etc. So if you took the franchise fee off the table, you would still be purchasing electricity at the exact same rate of 5.3 cents. So this $1.75 million, when it is received, is money in the taxpayer's pocket, actually, not money that the taxpayers pay.
Back in the pocket.
Back in the pocket. So it's $50 if the Mr. Kitchell's figure was accurate, and I have no idea if it is. It's $50 to every man, woman, and child in the city. So it's back in the pocket. If you take it off out of the agreement, you're out $1.75 million. So I don't find that advisable. I want to be sure that the concept of opting out, in quotes, of the IURC is understood. You are still subject, the Logansport Municipal Utilities is still subject to the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, with the exception of rates and charges to customers. That's what the provision that when you opt out of IURC regulation, that's really what happens. So you're not exempt from IURC authority. You are exempt from IURC oversight of what you all charge your customers, which I presume can only come down if the cost of the power that you generate or purchase comes down. So it's in the taxpayers' and the ratepayers' benefit. The development agreement was mentioned, and some people have said, well, there's 15 citations to the development agreement. You can't confirm and ratify this until those are clear. I actually went through each one of those citations in the Q&A. Most of them were insubstantial. There were a couple that were substantive, and I put the provisions in the Q&A with the help of the superintendent of exactly what the development agreement referred to in those circumstances, and one was the option to acquire. There is an option to acquire phase 1, that's between 300 megawatts and 500 megawatts of the facility, totally at the city's option 25 years from now, or 25 years from the date it starts operating. So there's no forcing you to do it. It's only if it's advisable. If let's say there's an environmental concern, or you don't want a 25-year-old facility, or your successors aren't interested in a 25-year-old facility, at that time there's absolutely no obligation to accept it. So I'm very happy to answer any other questions that you raise or that you would like addressed, and appreciate the opportunity to be with you this evening in support of your ordinance to confirm and ratify the PPA.
Bob.
Yeah, Brian, on our ordinance here, first of all, I want to point out that it does say ratifying and confirming what the LMU board did. On the first whereas 2, says the power to be produced by renewable fuel and post-recycled waste. Will that be in the development agreement?
Yeah, actually, both the development agreement and the PPA give the ability to the developer, but not the requirement, that they can either originally construct or retrofit the facility to receive refuse-derived fuel. One of the interesting aspects here's what I suspect, Counselor, that the phase 1 will be built with natural gas and up and running, 300 to 500 megawatts, and then additional phases, if constructed, will be constructed with the technology required to burn refuse-derived fuel.
Well, I would have a kind of a problem with that, because our RFP says that we will have refuse-derived fuel, and the city is only going to get phase 1. So that would say if it's not in phase 1, we're not getting refuse-derived fuel. We would be stuck with natural gas. So I would hope that we would get in the development agreement that it will be RDF in the phase 1. So that's one point. I wanted to also, for the public, he's talked about the questions regarding the power plant. I know that's on the city's website, LMU's website. I think it's 20-some pages long here. A lot of the questions been asked tonight are on there. And I also wanted to point out that I believe, yes, Brian, you did this risk assessment?
Yes, sir. I didn't mention that. There have been some very valid and interesting questions that have been raised by members of the public, members of the council, and the LMU board. And one of the questions this was from the major users group. They actually hired another law firm, a utility law firm, to review everything. And one of the questions, which, by the way, they said the agreement, they didn't have any questions about the agreement whatsoever, so I felt pretty good about that. At least that was stated at the public meeting at the high school. One of the questions that was asked was, well, did you consider all the possible risks? Well, you can't consider every possible risk, but can you consider as many risks as possible and how they are being addressed? So I put together that risk mitigation chart, and the response was thank you from the LMU board last week, or utility service board, I should say, was thank you for that, and that was reviewed by the superintendent and the mayor and other consultants, just to be sure we had covered everything, and felt very good about it.
The same thing. Thanks for that. And I wanted to point. This is 6 pages here. Is this on the city's website also?
It's on the LMU website.
All right. Thank you.
And it has been for several weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Is there any more discussion?
What's the status of the DA? How far along are we?
Well, we sent our draft, I would say probably a month ago. Mayor, is that roughly right?
Roughly.
Pull a date up for you here. And honestly, the developer's been traveling, and it has focused really on the PPA because that's the financing mechanism. It was in both iterations, the development agreement, or previously the build, operate, transfer agreement when you were operating under the RFP was a painful process. So I think I shared with the public and with you all who were present at a tentative approval schedule that had the development agreement submitted to you all tonight, right? Because that's what we had hoped. We haven't gotten substantive comments back from the developer yet. It was our hope that there would actually be a meeting this week. That's not going to happen, not due to our unavailability. So I really don't know. I can't give you a predicted schedule on it, Councilor. I'm sorry about that. And Mayor, I don't know if you have anything.
It's a moving target at this point. We had certainly hoped to advance the development agreement till tonight, but keep in mind everybody gets another bite at the apple before the purchase power agreement becomes final. City Council has to approve the development agreement, and then Utility Service Board also has to ratify and confirm the development agreement as well. So we're working.
This is the first reading on this ordinance.
It's the first reading on this. We're working very hard towards it, but there are multiples of these projects going on right now. The developer is involved in several more, and it's just very, very difficult to bring all this stuff together in the schedule that we would like. Is there any more questions? Any more comments from members of council?
I have a comment, Your Honor.
Yes.
As an elected member of this council, I'm expected and trusted by the citizens of Logansport to do my due diligence to protect my constituents, the ones who elected and put me up here. This is without question, during my 6 years as a member of Logansport City Council, the most talked about, controversial, approached subject that I have dealt with. In fact, it trumps every other item that I've worked with combined. And I've read through the PPA, and Mr. Bosma, you've done your due diligence. We are protected in every way imaginable and conceivable. In fact, I can't believe anyone would sign it on the other side with how you've protected the city of Logansport. So I want to thank you.
That's been our concern too, Councilor, honestly.
I want to thank you for taking care of us there. But as I'm out and in my ward, and I am every night, I get stopped by multiple people on a walk in the grocery store, at the gas station, small town, and I get asked repeatedly these three questions. Chuck, where is this plant going to be? It could be gigantic. And I have to answer, I don't know, because I don't know. Is it going to be in my backyard? I've heard it's going to be here. I've heard it's going to be there. I don't know. I don't have a clue. My second question I get is, who is providing all of this money? Who are these people? Who is this group? Are there any local monies that are going to be invested in this? And again, without question and being completely transparent and honest, I have no idea. And my third question is, so what exactly are we going to pay for power, Chuck? How much money are we going to save on our bill? I know that it's 5.3. I've received several emails from Mr. Hartman regarding what possible rates are, tentative rates are, and right now the only thing I can say is I don't know. I know what LMU is going to purchase it for. I don't know what LMU is going to turn around and charge the customer for. I've been told that the rates will be lower, but I don't know. So I want it to all work out. I honestly do. I think it would be an awesome thing for our city, for our utility. When we met at the Columbia Club, when you were on Green USA's team at that time, which was competing with Pyrolyzer with Frank, I got to sit and talk with Frank about his technology, about his business model, about how he's going to recap his money, and I could wrap my head around it. All I wanted at that time was to see that his technology was legitimate. Turns out, again, being totally transparent and honest, I guess we took trips to some of these things. I was never invited. I was never informed. I found out through other people. So are we being completely upfront, honest, and transparent? I don't think so. I have those questions. And now again, with this one and this Bigfoot, this is something that may or may not exist out there because we don't have any real definitive proof. They say, whoever they is, we're going to use the exact technology that Frank Canterbury pitched to you for the refuse-derived fuel. Okay, show me some place in the world where we've had a plant that has operated at half of 150. Let's go 75 megawatts solid for a year. Show me that exists, because I haven't seen it, I haven't heard about it, I can't find it anywhere. And again, when I talked to Frank, I said, I think this is fantastic. This is absolutely the future of energy when the technology becomes safe, ready, and usable. And Frank knew it. I mean, he felt it. But where's Frank today? I don't know. His apartment's being foreclosed on in Boca Raton. So, with those things being said, I can't support it, because those are three very simple questions that I feel like I should have an answer to as a member of this council. And my answer to all of them is, I don't know. Thanks.
More comments from council? Councilman Bishop?
First of all, on Chuck's comments there. I can't really disagree with him as far as where the plant's going to be, who's going to be investing. I think we will find that out after we get these agreements. That's what this PPA agreement's for, so they can get the financing. Once they get that, I think we will learn at that point where the plant's going to be and who the investors are. And as far as our bills go, I believe that will be determined by the Utility Service Board, and it could be lower than that 5.3 cents. I just want to point out that I have a statement here that yesterday I noticed in the news that the EPA announced new regulations to aim to cut the U.S. power plant carbon emissions by 30% by 2030. With the Obama administration's forced extinction of the coal-fired generating plants, the cost of generating electricity is estimated to go up 4% nationwide in 2015 and 5% or more in the Midwest. Soon after I was elected to the City Council in 2012, I attended a USB meeting where we were presented with options for our generating plant to comply with the non-funded federal mandates on our power plant. None of the options would cut the cost of our already high electricity costs. I knew if we didn't come up with another option, Logansport's future was in big trouble. Even though we have been criticized for moving too quickly, this has taken years, not months or days, to accomplish. Over the last couple of years, the rate stabilization team has worked hard to give us a good option. We have traveled thousands of miles and spent countless hours to get to where we are now. With the establishment of Logansport's new power plant, we know our costs will go down instead of going up. We will retain LMU jobs and create many additional jobs. This alone adds millions of dollars to our local economy. There will be an immediate economic development boom in Logansport when an estimated 1,000 workers begin building an $800 million plus plant. Millions of dollars pouring into Logansport will create even more jobs to service this boom. Once the plant is finished, it will pay millions in property taxes. There will be no tax abatements with this project. It has taken Logansport 175 years to build a total assessed value that we have now of $350 million. We will increase our assessed value by over $800 million in just a couple years. This increase in assessed value will enable us to lower taxes and give us the ability to provide better services to our city. Better streets, better sidewalks, lower utility costs, and improved quality of life for everyone in Logansport. The emissions from the plant will be a fraction of the emissions we have been breathing our entire lives here in Logansport. There are a few things that come without risk. I believe the mayor and our rate stabilization team has done an outstanding job of keeping our risk to a minimum. Once the project is approved, we will receive a franchise fee of $1.75 million, which will return the investment taxpayers have made to secure this project. At that time, we have nothing to lose but time. Logansport has been on a downward spiral for many years. In the previous 5 years before we took office, we lost over 1,500 jobs. While running for office, many of us pledged to do our best to turn the situation around and begin to create jobs. As Pledo reported this year, we gained 250 jobs. That's not enough, but it's definitely heading in the right direction. I believe the new green energy power plant, with the new green energy power plant, the lower cost of utilities, the completion of the Hoosier Heartland Industrial Corridor, lower taxes, a great school corporation, a clean and safe city, a rejuvenated park system, and the creations of a pro-business environment we will continue to see the growth of good-paying jobs here in Logansport. I'd like to thank the entire USB, Utility Service Board, and their superintendent, Paul Hartman, for the due diligence that they did. Each and every one on that board took their responsibility of ratepayers of LMU very seriously and gave a nonpartisan, unanimous vote of support for the PPA. I want to especially commend the mayor of Logansport, Ted Franklin, for his enormous amount of time and energies he put into this project. As one of his neighbors and one that works closely with him, I know firsthand the amount of time that he has spent on his new job. He generally works 7 days a week and many 12-hour-plus days. I've become more and more impressed by the knowledge he has of this agreement as time has passed by. I'm confident that he has secured a great deal for Logansport that will go down in history as a turning point of our community in a positive direction. It will give me great pleasure tonight to vote for this agreement. Thank you.
Councilman Buck?
I've been a resident of Logansport since 1974. I've seen it die. And if we don't do something, it's going to finish. They'll bury it. Logansport itself has an opportunity with this power plant to bring it back to life. I'm not sure. I haven't talked to all of Chuck's constituents, but my constituents and people throughout the community have said to me, do what you're doing. Go ahead. You need to get the power plant. And that's where I'm from tonight. We've kicked the can down the road way too long. It's time to grow up and vote for something that will make Logansport better.
Any more comments from council?
Yeah, I'd like to say something about the power plant. I've been a citizen of Logansport since I was 5 years old. I remember when Logansport was a thriving town. I remember being 10, 12 years old, being downtown on a Friday night, and you were bumping into people. There were so many people shopping, going to grocery stores, going into Kresge's, going to different places. And I've seen this community go right down the tubes. Water Street, 1,500 jobs. You can drive down it yourself and see the factories that are closed. We need a voice in Logansport for change, and I think our mayor has done that. He's done more than any mayor that I can remember, and I go way back. And it's a shame that people don't get on board for something that's going to be positive for this community. So, I'm behind this 100%. Do I know everything about this? No. It's a chance, but it's a chance we need to take if this community is going to survive, or if we're just going to be a little bedroom community with no jobs. And that's where I stand on that.
Any more comments from members of council? I would like to read just one Indiana statute that I found earlier. I've recited it earlier, but I came across it again this week. I want to remind council about this. This is Indiana Code 8-1-2.4-1. It's been a law since 1982, 32 years. It is the policy of the state to encourage the development of alternate energy production facilities, cogeneration facilities, and small hydro facilities in order to conserve our finite and expensive energy resources and to provide for the most efficient utilization. Section B is definitions. Definition of an alternative energy production facility means a solar, wind turbine, waste management, resource recovery, refuse-derived fuel, or wood-burning facility. That law has been on the books since 1982. This isn't anything new. We've been talking about this for 2.5 years now. We've been working on it for 2.5 years. It may seem like it's coming at us quickly, but it's not. We first revealed this in November of 2012. That's when the discussion started publicly. We can't answer every question. I don't think we ever will answer every question. This is a moving target. It's hard to nail it down. I don't think Lafayette's going to back away from their airplane engine facility over there, and they have questions. They had questions with Subaru. They had questions with Subaru last year when Subaru intended to build the Toyota, or the Subaru Impreza, and Toyota pulled out. It's a moving target. It's the nature of the beast. It's the economy. We can't sit around. We have sat around and lost all those jobs. Logansport has lost population 100 years ago, we were at 25,000. Today, we're at 18,000, and we continue the trend. It's time to move on this, and I would ask council to support this ratification and the confirming ordinance that you have in front of you tonight. With that, I'll call for the vote on ordinance 2014-20.
Jeremy Ashcraft,
No.
Yeah.
Bob Bishop,
Yes.
Joe Buck,
Yes.
Gary Fox,
Yes.
Charlie Hastings.
Yes.
Chuck Liddell,
No.
Teresa Popejoy.
Yes.
Ordinance 2014-20 passes on first reading on a vote of 5 in favor and 2 opposed. Are there any board member comments? Is there any miscellaneous business, including matters not already considered? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're adjourned. Thank you.